Well, hello and welcome to this edition of our Limitless Live. I am super excited to be with you today for what we're calling Thriving Thursday. And I'm sure if you've been here on a Thursday before, you know what this is all about. But I'm excited about the way we're going to approach this topic today with my esteemed colleague and fabulous friend, Miss Elle Nelson. Welcome, Elle.
Thank you so much. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where we're tuning in from. I am so honored to be here with you this morning,
I'm
truthfully.
excited to be with you as well. And where are you tuning in from?
Good question. Normally from London, but today I'm in Montana. So that's where I'm tuning in from. Good morning, Lane. I see you hopping on there too. Karla,
Love it.
where are you tuning in from today?
I'm in Houston, Texas.
Hey, yo.
Yes. And I think I just learned, Lane is in Phoenix. And I think this is a reminder that they don't do daylight savings time. I think that's right. And so, um,
Yeah,
does Montana do daylight savings time?
we do. Mhm.
Okay. And so you're on Mountain Standard Time and it's around 10:30 or so. Is that right? I love
Yes.
it. I love
On
it.
it. You're
Love
good.
it. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to dive into this topic with you, as we approach the idea of Thriving Thursday. You raised this big word that I think is just so important for us to be thinking about when we think about what it means to thrive, what it looks like to thrive
Yeah.
individually, in teams, in community. So, tell me kind of what is this idea of psychological safety that you've raised, and how do you come to thinking about that in the context of thriving?
Yeah, absolutely. So, psychological safety, it's something that I've probably been aware of for a long time, but I think when it comes to the term psychological safety, that's something that's a little bit more new for me. And really, the reason why we brought it up and we were talking about it, I was thinking about it in the context for teams. So I'm working with a new team this season. So I'm going to be starting with them in a few weeks. We're going into preseason. And if anybody knows the sporting world, you've got a lot of new players, you got transfers coming in, you got some returners, you might have new staff. So there's a totally new group that's coming in. And psychological safety is something that I see and many see as absolutely critical when it comes to a high performance team. And really, it goes well beyond sport. We were talking about it and we'll get into it more. It's in the corporate space as well. And even in like family dynamics and groups and in friend groups, it's something that's, I think it's critical when it comes to creating what we'll talk about, which is a safe environment that's withholding judgment, where people can come and be their full, authentic selves, speak their truth, share their voice, own their mistakes, and do so in a way that's saying, hey, how can we be better? How can I be better and be supported in this group and come on my own or as myself? Uh,
Hmm.
so that to me is psychological safety. It's that ability to have this shared idea of everybody showing up as their authentic selves without judgment, and it's this space that's being held, whether that's on an individual level or a collective level. And if we can do that, holy cow, how is that not thriving? Like, what an environment that is. It's the kind of environment that I know I want to be in, and it's the kind of environment where if we don't have it, I know that that's a pretty tough place to be, and it's hard to.
Mm.
So I think for me, that's how it's related to today. But I know I covered a lot there. So what about you, Karla? What does that mean
No,
for you? What do you
I
think?
love it. I love it. I'm always thinking of the contra, right? I'm always thinking of the other side of it. As you try to understand a concept, I think about taking a ball and turning it around and seeing all the other sides. And
Yeah.
what you just said about being able to show up in a space and be on the same page, right? Moving in the same direction, but being able to be authentic, individually authentic in that process, right? Is just so important. And it raised the contra for me of the idea of groupthink, right?
Mm,
Which is probably the most docile way to put it, right? But in an extreme environment, societies have accomplished everyone being on the same page, right? By brainwashing, by making people completely psychologically unsafe, by
Yeah.
telling everyone you've got to be the same, act the same. And if your ideas are inconsistent with what we're saying or telling you to do, right, then you're not welcome here. And there can be dire consequences. And so I created this, I'm talking about this extreme example, and we're probably all thinking of something from 100 years ago in a society far away that we've read about in our history books, right? But that type of mentality creeps in to teams and workplaces all the time,
Mhm.
right? We are focused on achieving one goal headed in one direction. And if you don't get on board with the right way of thinking about it, which is the way we told you to think about it, right, then you're not welcome here. And this place becomes psychologically unsafe. It
Yeah.
happens in families, it
Yeah.
happens in relationships. For some people, the idea of being on the same page, moving together in one direction, right,
Yeah.
um, means no one can shift too far or veer too far out of the lines, and
Yeah.
that is a psychologically unsafe environment. So
Yeah.
I had to go down that little dark path just a little bit because I think it's so important for us to
Right.
think about what's the alternative. Some of these terms are so familiar to us, we kind of throw them around and it's like, oh, it's no big deal, but it's a really big deal because it's easy to
Right.
creep into a place where we've created a psychologically unsafe environment for the people who are participating. So,
Absolutely.
anyway, thank you for your context and again for raising this super
Yeah.
important idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you for being honest and like because the dark stuff is the reality, and it's the reality that we
Mhm,
need to bring to the surface because we want it to be different. So we can't just
mhm,
talk about, hey, if we do this, this is why it's going to be beneficial. But like let's talk about the harsh reality, the harsh truth of how often this comes up for us. It is very real. It's
mhm,
probably more natural, right? That group think
mhm,
or try and get everybody to assimilate to what we think would be the right way to do things instead of being open to other ways. But kind of
mhm,
bringing that to the surface, I think it's necessary. I think that's our job. We got to bring it forth, right?
mhm.
Name it to tame it. We got to bring it up so we can work through it together. Um,
Absolutely. Name it to tame it. Oh, I love
yeah,
that.
Colin Henderson right there, I think. Uh,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
I almost think about it like I had a professor in my undergrad. This was obviously quite a while ago, but he would talk about how the people that he had in his life thought so differently from him, and that is exactly what he needed. That's exactly what he loved because he kind of used the metaphor of if I'm in a car, right? If I'm in a car and I've got my rear view mirror, I've got my mirrors there, ultimately my friends are the ones that are in the car that are going, hey, I see this blind spot over here, or hey, have you thought about it this way? Hey, you got something behind you can't see it right now.
Mhm,
People in the car with me, and I need them because they see different angles than I see.
mhm,
Have them in my life. So without them, right, it's like if we didn't have our rear view mirror, if we didn't have the side mirrors, we didn't have somebody looking out for us and we weren't turning our head, right, then we might get to where we want to go, but I think it's going to be a much more rough journey to get
absolutely. Ooh, I'd
slowly.
be so nervous, right?
Oh,
Okay, Ellie, you don't have kids yet, right?
I do not.
Okay, but have you ridden in that car that was so packed with luggage that you couldn't see out of the rearview mirror?
Yes, I
What?
have.
It's like we got to the destination, but
Yeah.
you were a lot more tense, right?
Right.
Um, right? You were
Right.
a lot more tense and anxious on that ride. And you did need a little more help, right? Maybe someone in the passenger seat who's able to turn all the way around to be able to see.
Even
So
get out of the car and go direct.
exactly, exactly. So thank you for painting that picture.
Right.
of those blind spots, because been there, done that. So really quickly, I want to see some of the comments that people are making, right? So Donovan comes in and says, love the idea of thrive. We talk about how it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a team to launch a thriving teen. And it looks like right now, he's in a school counseling office. So teens just unloaded in my school counseling office. He's holding space for them, having the container for unapologetically letting loose and venting.
Yeah.
Was such an honor, right? So
Mhm.
this idea of well, first of all, as a counselor, holding space for others, right? And then needing others to hold space for you so that you can kind of release a lot of what you picked up. That resonates, right? And then Lane picks up on sometimes the desire to belong overpowers the need to be authentic. Yeah, that's
Mm.
real. Um, anyway, go ahead.
That Yeah, I was just gonna say that to me, Lane, your comment there speaks volumes, and it's something that I was thinking about earlier, and it's this from an individual standpoint, and also like how we as individuals are contributing to the group and how the group functions. I think of the role of the ego. And the ego is like this outer layer that we're presenting to the world, and oftentimes it's like it's trying to protect
Mm,
us, right, from our insecurities, from our trauma. And so it's this way that we present ourselves to the outside world, and I think that is such a big contributor to sometimes what hinders us being able to hold space or being able to be our authentic self in space. And so how we contribute to psychological safety is, I think, one of the biggest things is addressing our ego.
mm,
Like sometimes when we go into a group, what is it that we're trying to fulfill? Are we trying to have our voice heard and be is there a power dynamic? Do we need to feel like we're respected? Do we feel that we shouldn't have a voice or we don't deserve to have a voice and other people are more important so we get
mhm,
quiet? Uh, Being aware of your ego, and when you go into a room, we all want to be part of a team where we can let our ego dissolve. We can say, "Hey, it's okay. We can disarm. This is
mm,
okay. Safe. Share what you need to share,
yeah,
right? Be willing to be your most authentic self." And so that involves us being able to recognize when our ego is there and present, and being able to kind of let it dissolve or befriend
mhm.
it in the moment. So Lane just brought that up for me and made me think about the role of the ego when it comes to psychological
Mhm.
safety.
Wow. So here's one. Donovan says it's super tough to let the venting, sharing, real expression happen. So many parents or leaders in the workplace fear what would happen if they allowed the real expressions. It's harmful to mental health and unsafe to keep a lid on it. Absolutely.
Mm,
I think about creating what I call sacred spaces for professional women and women of color in particular, right? Where they feel like they can vent, share, and express in a real way and let the lid off, right? Because so many
yeah.
times they're showing up in their workspaces and they don't feel psychologically safe and they don't feel welcome to be authentic, and they feel like there's a ton of risk involved. I was just talking to a professional the other
Yeah.
day who said, yeah, I don't think I can actually be authentic at work. I don't think that's one of the privileges that I have. I don't think it would go well or serve me well to do that. Wow. With all this popular
Yeah.
conversation about authenticity, she says, look, that doesn't seem like one of the things that's available to me. And the question is that a psychologically unsafe workplace? Or is she not going to feel psychologically safe in any workplace because of the package
Mm,
in which she exists as a human being every day? Right? Right?
mm, yeah.
you know, so one of the things that, I wanted to talk to you about is like, how do you create psychological safety in the teen context? With
Mm,
all of your experience as a world-class performing athlete, I love to talk to women athletes, right? Yes. And I'd like to
Oh,
daydream
I
about my illustrious career and how fast I was as a 10-year-old in fifth grade. I was very fast. Um, and that was the
I love
height
it.
of,
More of
yeah.
an athlete.
Huh?
I just said you're more of an athlete than all of us. Truly, I
Oh,
believe it.
I don't know where you got that from. Yeah, I'm talking about that being the height of my athletic prowess. Okay, in fifth grade. Anyway,
Yeah.
tell me more about how you promote psychological safety on teams.
Yeah. That's a good question, and I wanna hear your thoughts on this as well. I would say that one of the biggest things, like, if I think of a pyramid, the foundation of that pyramid is trust. It's being able to trust other people, trust the people on my team, trust their intentions. And again, I think that ties into the ego, which we can get into more later. But trust means like if you say you're going to do something, can you do that? Can you be dependable? Can your actions be consistent? Can you be reliable? Right. And so that is probably for me like the foundation of psychological safety when it comes to a team environment is, can I trust you? Can I feel like I can be myself? I can speak my mind. I can share my slip up or my mistake. But I can trust that you are going to know that I'm doing the best that I can, or even if I slip up, we're on the same team and we're both trying to be
Mhm.
successful as well. So trust would be the foundation really for me, because that means that if I trust you, I can trust your intention. And so when it comes to conflict, which I think is something that we shy away from a lot because we think it's a bad
Mhm.
thing, especially nowadays. That's what I think. That's what I see most of the time. I'm not trying to overgeneralize it, but I think conflict is kind of feared
Mhm.
sometimes. But actually, conflict and opposing viewpoints can be a really beneficial thing because it means we're being authentic. We're sharing how we feel for the betterment of the
Mhm.
group. But we have to trust the intention. That's where the trust is the foundation. I have to trust that if you are telling me that I did something wrong, or trust that you're telling me a mistake that you made, you are going to trust the intention, and we're both going to trust each other's intentions, that is with the goal of making the team better and maintaining the kind of environment that we want to be in. So trust is like the foundation of it, and other things like the conflict, communication, accountability, like those all kind of build off of it. But really, that trust is the main one, and it filters through our actions, through our communication, through our words. That's for me like one of the biggest ones.
That is, yeah, yeah. So one of the first questions that comes to mind with me is, well, what happens when someone makes a mistake or they fall short, right?
Mm,
I'm thinking about the role of trust on the sports field, you know.
mhm.
Could be the difference between winning the game or having a major life-altering injury, right? Um, and oftentimes people in workplaces don't feel that same level of stakes, being involved. Um,
Yeah.
Current workplaces where we spend a lot of time behind computers, with information and thoughts versus being able to drop chemicals or, you know, have a major thing break, right? So,
Mhm.
how do we deal with it when people make mistakes, or drop a ball, oftentimes because they
Yeah.
didn't recognize the significance of that mistake or that ball dropped?
Yeah. So I think that this is a good exercise for anybody who's tuning in to do a little self-reflection of when somebody else makes a mistake, especially if it's like a more costly mistake. So if I think of a team context, it could be during a game, there's a mistake that's made, and maybe there's a penalty that happens. And so there's a penalty kick I'm thinking of
Yes,
soccer, by the
yes.
way.
Mhm.
So there's a penalty kick that's taken that cost us the game, right? That could be a mistake that happens. But what's going to contribute most to what happens next is what response am I choosing to give? Like where is my heart in that moment? Because ultimately it goes back to that trust. Do I trust that my teammate did the best that they could? right? Did I believe that they gave it their
Mhm.
all, right? And so how I choose to respond to that mistake, and this is where the self-reflection again comes in. How do you respond when somebody else makes a mistake? Do you snap at them? Do you go, "Why did you do that? Why didn't you do
Mhm.
this? What could you have done differently? Like, come on, why did you do that?" The way that you respond, especially your body language, your tone, how you're carrying yourself, sends a really big message to that person. And if they feel that they are being judged for that mistake, then they are going to be less likely to want to admit that mistake. They're going to be less likely to maybe take
Mhm.
risks or give it their all because they're afraid of what could happen as a
Mhm.
response, right? And it creates that disconnect. So we all have to kind of take responsibility for how we respond to others. That for me is the biggest one. It's the self reflection, right?
Yes.
Because we would never want like if I make a mistake, I have to be willing to own up to it. That's where my accountability comes in. But if I feel shame and guilt and judgment coming from other people, then I'm going to be like, I want to go within myself.
Mhm.
I want to shut down. I don't really want to show up. I don't feel like I belong here anymore. I'm probably not capable. I'm going to start doubting myself. And then what energy am I then bringing back to the team and projecting on other
Mhm.
people? What kind of environment am I now contributing to? And it's very easy to kind of snowball, right? So, how I choose to respond when that happens to others and the grace that I choose to give my teammates and my colleagues and the people around me, that then sets a tone. It sets an example for how they can respond to me as well.
And in so doing, you've created a space for psychological safety. I love that.
Mm,
So when I ask, how do you promote psychological safety on teams? You said trust is the foundation. That's number one, right? And then, well, what happens when there's a breach of that trust through a mistake or an error or someone dropping the ball? You invited us to self-reflect. How would we want to be treated in that situation? Which I think just it just builds back up that trust, right? I can trust
yeah.
that the people around here are going to do what they say they're going to do, and follow through. And I can also trust that if I make a mistake, they're going to extend grace, right? And
Mm,
forgiveness, and expect and anticipate that I'll get back up and be better and stronger. I love that.
yeah.
So Lane said, from the earlier reference to ego, which you teased that we might come back to. He says, anytime we want to dive into how ego fuels the fight flight instinct and how it manipulates actions and perceptions, on lives, is highly encouraged. So he's inviting you to share more about how that ego piece plays in. And then he said, Ellie, I think you've found the hidden
Yeah,
offspring of five dysfunctions of a team and Maslow's hierarchy. Trust opens those doors to authenticity for sure.
absolutely. Oh, you guys are great.
Yeah.
Again, Lane, we can totally go back to ego. And again, Carla, I want to hear your thoughts on this too, because I know we just have a couple
Yeah.
minutes left. And I also want to give you the floor for a little bit more time. But when it comes to the ego, this is something that, so I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of like teammates where in football or soccer. Sorry, I live in England. So in soccer, we're on the field, and you might have one teammate yell at the other during a game and say like, "Hey, you needed to be there. This pass has got to be better," right? And they're when we it feels like being yelled at,
Mhm.
right? This is where the trust, and I have to trust your intention is to make me better, to tell me something that you need to tell me, that communication needs to happen. But my ego, right, could get in the way and go, "Hey, I don't want to be spoken to
Mm.
like that. Like clearly you have an issue with me. You don't think I deserve to be on the field right now." Right? So my this is an example. And again, I want you to, as you're taking this in, think of, in your own life, how this might be related. But if my insecurities are maybe I don't deserve to be here, or look at how good all these other players
Mhm.
are, you're constantly fighting for a position, and some weeks you might start, some weeks you might play, some weeks you might not. So you get to see a pretty raw version of how the ego comes into play. And so if I'm a little bit insecure about my talents or my abilities, and one of my teammates has a go at me for a pass or a play, then my ego could go, do you know what? Don't speak with me like to be like that. I I should be here, or like my insecurity starts playing out, and I might disconnect myself from my teammate because of my own insecurity, and that's my ego trying to protect me because it doesn't want me to be hurt,
Mhm.
right? Doesn't want me to be hurt. But what it's doing is it's causing a disconnect. And the trust as the foundation comes in and goes, hey, do you know what? It's a critical point during a game. The game moves really fast. They're trying to communicate something to me the best they know how. And maybe with their background, their upbringing, the only way they know how to talk is more
Mhm.
direct. So the best thing I can do is not take it personally. If it really bothers me, I need to have an open conversation when it's the right time, in the right place, in the right space. But right now, I need to trust that my teammate had good intentions, and I need to get back in the game.
Mm.
And that's where I have a duty to myself to say, hey, ego, I love you, but I'm more than
Yeah.
this.
Ooh. Yes.
That was
It
yeah,
was
no, I
intense.
kind of
I
just
was there on the soccer field trying to make the right play, and yeah, I probably screwed it up. So thank y'all for all the grace, right? And so
right.
Rochelle Jacobs says, when someone makes a mistake, practicing empathy is a great way to respond. Absolutely. And then she says, thank you, Karla, for creating that safe space during the Tuesday tea times. This is the part that hit me. I never knew the weight of holding in what I felt, thought it, in my struggles in life until I felt the freedom I feel when I'm vulnerable, transparent, and authentic. The freedom of being vulnerable, transparent, and authentic. So this gets back to how we promote psychological safety as individuals, right? You talked about it from the perspective of teams. I want to highlight this idea of vulnerability, transparency, right, and where and how we're able to do that. I think it's so important for us to create safe spaces for one another to do that, but I really think it's important for you to create a safe space for yourself to do that, because that's the person you spend the most time with. That's who you wake up with in the morning and who you go to sleep with at night. And I just was reflecting on a reading that I did about the power of daily emotional cleansing. Daily emotional cleansing. And I believe that this is a key to creating psychological safety for yourself so that you are not walking around in a heart that's broken, in a mind that's overwhelmed every single day, just kind of picking up these assaults and carrying them around and letting it pile on, pile on, pile on, versus having a daily practice of cleansing and releasing that. So then, of course, you asked me, well, how are we going to do this, Karla,
Oh yeah,
right?
that was coming.
Like,
Cleanse.
three
I'm
quick
ready.
things. Three quick things before we go. Number one, schedule the cry, right? Like create some time and space to cry it out. Maybe yell it out. I don't know if it needs to be a padded room or your car in the garage. I don't know, right? But schedule the cry time, right? Number two, write it out, right? I have to speak up for the power of journaling and just writing our thoughts, writing our feelings, getting it out, right? And then number three, if there is opportunity for venting to someone else, that's great, but you might just need to speak to yourself, right? And talk to yourself about how you feel and say it out loud. Someone might think that you're crazy, but saying it out loud is just so important, to really just own those feelings, and get it out. And then finally, of course, I got to speak up for meditation, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a very powerful tool for emotional cleansing. I hope these practical things have been helpful to you. I hope you can see that connection between psychological safety and being able to thrive in all the spaces where you show up for yourself and for others. We gotta go. I can't believe how quickly the time has gone by, Ellie. But I know that you are going to be here, I believe, tomorrow with, is it Patrick Norwood? Um,
Pat,
and
yeah, Patrick. I
and
think, yeah,
Patrick
Norris or Norwood.
Norris. Patrick Norris And
Yeah.
DJ Edison, super excited about their live tomorrow, same time, same place. And don't forget to download the Club Limitless app so that you can get access to more resources and more amazing room tilters like Ellie.
Oh, and like Karla, it's been such an honor. Time has flown. Everybody, thank you for joining in with us. I hope that you enjoyed it even half as much as I did because this has been phenomenal. Karla, you are amazing. I appreciate you.
Thank you. All the best, you guys. Make it a great Thrive Thursday.
Bye.